Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started here right now. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. I know everyone's got a lot on their plate right now. But we'll be talking to you today about the cultural and ecological significance of black ash, environmental conditions that threaten the species' existence, as well as our own findings and challenges through our project conducted this semester. In addition to recommendations for the potential preservation of the species throughout the Vermont and New England landscape. However, before we get started, we'd like to introduce ourselves. We'll switch slides. My name is Ethan Laurel. I'm from East Dorset, Vermont. And you can't already tell from the photo, I am majoring in forestry here at UVM.
I'm Lauren Crisanti. I'm an environmental science major here at UVM, and I'm from Basking Ridge, New Jersey.
Hi, my name is Ella. I'm also an environmental science major, and I'm from Ocean City, New Jersey.
Hello, I'm Sophia. I'm an environmental studies major, and I'm from Long Island, New York.
Hello, everyone. I'm Max Hertz. I'm a forestry major from Briar Commander, New York.
Hi, I'm Alex Loki. I'm also a forestry major, and I'm from Rockport, Maine.
And unfortunately, our other group member, Heather Walker, couldn't be here today to join us, but she's an environmental studies major from Morrisville, Vermont, and she really wanted to contribute and kind of join this discussion with us. So she's actually pre-recorded some information for everyone. So we'll start off their presentation with hearing from Heather.
Hello, everyone. My name is Heather Walker, and I'm an environmental studies student from Morrisville, Vermont. To start off, I'm going to explain what the NR206 class is all about. NR206 is a senior level course in the Rubenstein School that engages students with the surrounding community. In this project-based class, groups of students work together, such as ourselves, and work with a community partner throughout the entire semester to solve a local issue relating to the environment. The goal of the class is to offer students the opportunity to utilize the skills learned throughout their college careers to give back to the community and hone in on professional skills before graduation. So, for our project, we worked with Vermont Urban and Community Forestry, VTUCF, and specifically paired with our community partner, Charlotte Cadeau. VTUCF has provided educational, technical, and financial assistance to well over 175 Vermont communities, helping Vermont steward, cultivate, and manage trees and their associated ecosystems since 1991. VTUCF's mission statement is to lead community members, businesses, and governments in understanding the value of urban and community forests, and to promote public responsibility for and participation in the stewardship of these resources for this and future generations. Our community partner, Charlotte Cadeau, is VTUCF's Black Ash Inventory and Outreach Specialist, as well as a graduate student here at UVM. Charlotte is an advocate for black ash here in Vermont and strives to build awareness about the emerald ash borer's impending impact on black ash, as well as towards land access for Abenaki basket makers. Charlotte has been a fantastic role model and educator throughout our entire project.
So before we get into the specifics of our work, we wanted to provide a little bit of background on black ash and EAB, emerald ash borer, as I'm sure you're all aware. So black ash is a very ecologically significant species. It performs a crucial role in nutrient cycling of nitrogen and carbon in the wetland ecosystems that it thrives in. It also is super efficient at regulating water levels and returning excess moisture to the atmosphere. Emerald ash borer, EAB, is a large threat to this species. It was first detected in Michigan in 2002, and as you can see on the map, it has spread to the northeastern United States. As of June 2022, EAB has been identified in 36 states across the US, and it's been pretty much a bad thing for black ash in terms of the thriving and the way that the tree can survive in our ecosystems. Any tree that is afflicted by EAB will succumb to those infections in 3 to 5 years, and black ash as a species is most susceptible as a native ash species because there's no observed resistance to EAB in that species. As well as being ecologically significant, it's also very culturally significant. The Abenaki people have a really strong connection culturally to black ash. In the Abenaki creation story, mankind was shaped from the ash tree, and they live in harmony with the earth as people of ash. In the story, they share their breath with all living things. There's also strong historical connections to the species due to the traditional basket weaving that they use black ash to, kind of push this tradition forward. It's a longstanding Abenaki practice and livelihood, and it has since expanded beyond the borders of the Abenaki community and is now practiced across Vermont. Much of the cultural knowledge has been lost, however, and a lot of tribes no longer have native basket makers. There's growing concern that with the infestation of EAB and the decline of black ash, that we'll lose some of that traditional knowledge as a resource. The baskets you see on this screen were provided by Carrie R. Wood and the Vermont Abenaki Arts Association.
All right. I'm sure you're all aware, if not when you came here, you are now, that the problem at hand is that there's an impending decline in black ash due to the emerald ash borer. We specifically narrowed in on the knowledge gap regarding inventory and management of the species. So during this project, we wanted to keep a couple things in mind. First, Charlotte and UTUCF has already done a lot of work towards this project, so we wanted to be sure to build off of pre-existing knowledge. In addition, this is primarily an environmental issue, but we wanted to be sure to bring to light cultural implications of potential die-off. We also wanted to be sure to utilize local resources and knowledge in the formulation of our game plan. And lastly, we wanted to be sure that our project would actually be helpful in furthering this work and not just take off the boxes for class requirements.
So moving along into our objectives to reach this overall goal of kind of addressing that problem statement we mentioned. The first objective was to complete black ash inventory, including DBH, canopy cover, and bowl height of some forests within reach to us. So that included Mud Pond in Williston, the Audubon Center in Huntington, and Ferrisburg Municipal Forest. So we knew that it wouldn't really be feasible to do an entire inventory of every single black ash tree in these forests. But instead, we kind of did a general population assessment by going around and finding trees within kind of the time and geographical access that we had. So we looked at these different attributes I mentioned. So DBH is diameter at breast height, and that's an indication of the size of the tree and is an attribute that can kind of be tracked over time to see how that tree is growing. Canopy cover gives good insight into the leaves on the tree and the foliation, and can give insight into whether or not it might be afflicted by a pest such as the emerald ash borer. And finally, bowl height is a measurement specifically to look at kind of the height of how tall that like straight uninterrupted trunk is, and that's very specific to this project because it's a good indicator of whether or not the tree might be viable to be used for basket making. So once we did these observations and collected these different attributes, we added it into iNaturalist, which is a citizen science app that allows users to contribute different observations of species they encounter. So adding our own observations and completing this objective allowed us to add powerful data to a compilation of observations of black ash throughout Vermont. Our second objective that we wanted to address was using inventoried and public data to create an extrapolated map of potential black ash locations in Vermont municipal forests. So the inventory data was kind of what I just mentioned, using iNaturalist observations of black ash species. And then the public data was a variety of resources that we thought would be most useful to kind of paint a picture of common landscape characteristics for black ash. So that includes soil types, topography, the public forest boundaries, and different natural communities. Once we created this map, we integrated it into an ArcGIS story map, which is an online interactive resource that allows us to kind of visualize the map in an interactive way and kind of read through that information. So it's more digestible and can kind of be shared to anyone, no matter what software they have. So I'm gonna go ahead and open that up and kind of give everyone a preview of. So this is the story map, and we kind of start with an introduction to the project, significance, and kind of what purpose this map is serving. And then going into an overview of the map, this is kind of walking through the different layers and the reasoning for those layers and kind of what that information can tell us. So down below further in the map, there's somewhere where you can open this entire extent, use all the capabilities such as a search bar and the legend and everything. So that's really important for anyone who wants to kind of do further exploration of it. So this is kind of going to be more of a zoomed out picture, but on the map, you can see blue dots representing the different spots where black ash was observed in that iNaturalist app across Vermont. And those orange dots are the areas that we contributed our own data during this project. Moving along, the next layer we added was some of those characteristics from public data I was mentioning. So one of those is muck and peat soil, which is very common for black ash to grow in. And then we also added in different natural communities where black ash are found, either as an occasional species or an abundant species. Then in order to tie this together with municipal lands, we added in some boundary data from a public database that highlights community forests, town parks, and other municipal land. And so all of these are outlined in red, and then we did a special query to find the ones specifically overlapping with those common black ash areas, such as the muck and peat soil or the natural communities. And those are highlighted in green to kind of point out these are the areas we expect black ash might be. So here's just a zoomed in area as an example of how all of these layers combine together to provide a useful tool. So that green boundary is the Cornwall Swamp Management Area. This purple polygon is indicating a red maple northern white cedar swamp, which is an abundant black ash community. The orange crosshatched polygon is indicating the presence of muck and peat soils. As I mentioned, all of this in that expanded map would have a legend, so I'll be much more interpretable once you open it up. So this combination creates a likely environment for black ash to grow. And if you see that blue dot right there, that actually is an observation from iNaturalist where someone found a black ash tree. So this is a super, we hope, useful tool to kind of start investigating what's in the municipal lands around us. In the full map, there's additional resources we added that we thought could be useful, including streams and rivers, the full NRCS soil survey, wetlands, infrared imagery to look at the vegetation, and a digital elevation model of the landscape. So here we have access to the full web map where you can toggle all of those layers on and off. Then we've included some different tools to help you kind of interpret that map, a conclusion, and some additional resources and content or contact information. So the story map is something that can kind of be shared and sent along and stand on its own to describe some of our project as well.
For our third objective, we wanted to create a digital resource package we're going to be sending to municipal forest managers or town clerks or whoever's in charge of creating management plans and options for their town forests. Some of the highlights that I want to point out from this resource packet are our recommendations to not only create management plans for town forests that don't have current ones, but to specifically include language to talk about the cultural aspect and preservation of black ash in those town forests. There's also information to how you can create management plans and what you can do in terms of inoculation to preserve black ash in the landscape. And then for our fourth objective, we're sending out this resource packet that we've created. And much of that involves help from Charlotte with getting information for contacts of these municipal lands. And also we did spend a good amount of time finding some contacts on our own through the town websites.
Hello, everyone. So I'll be touching upon some of our results and findings that we have been able to conclude over the course of our semester working with this project. To start, I'd like to mention that we about a month ago we had a very insightful conversation with Carrie Wood, which helped guide and our own conclusions to be able to make, to follow through with the rest of our project. So to start, we learned of the extremely limited resources that the Abenaki people have when it comes to storing logs and splints of black ash, in addition to having places where they can teach, you know, the beautiful art of basket making. And this all comes down to the fact that the Abenaki tribe is not federally recognized. Next, we decided that we have to promote the alliances between state agencies and the indigenous communities to help improve infrastructure to allow Abenaki people to have said things. And then we'd also like to focus on preserving trees for generations to come due to the fact of how culturally significant the black ash is to the Abenaki people. Next, I'll be touching on the challenges and the lessons we learned during this project. And so one thing that we had a very, very difficult time doing was determining the geographic and ecological niche that black ash falls under while making our extrapolated map in ArcGIS. We also had a very hard time finding town management plans that even mentioned black ash. Never mind the plans themselves, very difficult to find. And then we also learned that the challenges of the indigenous community members that they have to go through to access black ash, like the limited communication between basket makers due to Vermont's bad Wi-Fi throughout the state. In addition to the locations of black ash that make it difficult for them, whether it's political, social, or physical barriers. And then lastly, there's just simply not enough resources and assistance for the Abenaki people to process black ash.
Looking forward, without action, less than 1 in 1,000 ash trees will survive an EAD infestation. While ash trees only comprise about 5 to 7% of Vermont's forest structure, there will be serious environmental degradation from the loss of the species, leading to the creation of canopy gaps that will allow the establishment of invasive species, along with the transitioning of ash-dominated forest ecosystem types that many native species currently rely upon, in addition to the previously mentioned cultural traditions that will be lost with the loss of the species. So given this rather negative outlook, we hope to inspire change through our resource package, implementing some of the strategies highlighted in town and community forest management plans. We hope this will enact change in those towns that will allow for the preservation of at least some pockets of black ash across the spatial extent of Vermont. So there's these legacy kind of areas that still have black ash presence. Well, furthering discussion, well, we also want to further the discussion on this topic, much like you guys are doing when you came in before the presentation. That's really what we want to nurture, is just to keep this topic on everyone's mind, because unfortunately EAB is already here and we don't have forever to kind of act before it becomes too late. So moving on to the next slide. But we would like to express a big thanks to everyone that made this project so successful this year, especially to Laura and Hyla for their contributions and making sure we had the right support and guidance this semester. To the VT-UCF community program has been a great in what they've been doing so far and what they will continue to do for black ash. And a huge, huge thank you to Charlotte for your guidance, support this semester. Since the beginning, we've had a great time and we really look forward to how this will evolve in the future. So we have this room till 4. We'd like to kind of discuss what we've learned beyond this presentation. This was just kind of a teaser. And hear what you guys have to say about black ash and what your thoughts are and everything. So thank you and look forward to answering any questions you may have. Are there any questions right away or?
Yeah.
That was amazing. Thank you all for preparing such a engaging presentation. I'm wondering if you all could speak a little bit more to the digital resource package that you created and what's in it and how you're sending it out and how many folks you're sending it to.
Yeah, definitely. So the digital resource package, we plan on sending it tomorrow because we want to kind of include a link to this presentation for anyone who wasn't able to make it. But the resource package is going to kind of have some of our research and findings summarized to give kind of an introduction similar to what we did today about black ash, why it's ecologically and culturally significant, some sources to go and allow other people to do more like research into that and learn about it and expand their knowledge as well. And then kind of an introduction to how that could fit into a management plan. So we're planning on including a lot of links to different resources for how to create a management plan, what other towns are in Vermont have already done similarly to incorporate emerald ash borer and like black ash and ash management in general, kind of just, I guess, give more resources and bring awareness to that. And a lot of the resource package will be kind of compiling all of that to make it easy so people don't have to go do their own like in-depth research and try and find those things and track it down because they could be all over the place. So we're hoping this resource package will give an introduction to all of that, make it easier to kind of find and figure out what might be best for their towns. We're also going to include the story map that we created so people can kind of explore that map and see where black ash are. And we hope to send it out, as mentioned before, to forest managers or conservation committee members, or if that information isn't available, a town clerk can pass along to who they think it might best fit. But we also hope that it could just go to anyone who's interested to learn more because even though we're not in a position maybe to make change, it's still interesting to us and other people might find it interesting too.
Our main goal with it is basically to push out this resource package, like Lauren said, that has all the resources already compiled, but to push it to town managers that might not know they even have black ash in their town and community forest, and kind of just spark that dialogue and discussion among maybe the town planning commission or the whatever would be in charge of that kind of community forest.
Mm-hmm.
And that was definitely one of the objectives that changed the most throughout the course of this project. Because we were originally planning on kind of making like strong, direct recommendations of what specific language should be in it and how there needs to be a lot more direct access for people to harvest black ash out of town forest. But we realized over the course of the semester that that's not exactly what a lot of people need, is an inundation of black ash logs. And we wanted to just provide a more general guided outline as to what options people have available. Joanne, sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, I've met some of you, but not all of you. I'm Joanne. I work with Charlotte and UCF. Thank you so much for your concentrated work on this semester. I have a bunch of questions, but I'm really curious to see your data, and what are your reflections from your time in the field? Where is it in the story map? Can you link to it?
Yes, it is in the story.
Yeah.
Is it? I know you collected it in iNaturalist, so it might just be that's on the map. But how did you decide where to go? What did you find when you got there? Maybe you could pick one of the 3 sites.
Yeah, so we
what was it like?
We got the site recommendations from Charlotte, and I think we started at Mud Pond just as kind of it was close by, we could go and we could identify black ash. It's kind of a start. And we did that for the first week, and then we went back for a second week to Mud Pond. We basically walked through the muck and peat area at Mud Pond and identified black ash. We basically went around the whole area they were present. And what we were looking for too is why were they there? What was the common denominator? What were they growing with? Or what was the soil conditions? Was there standing water? Were they in old river beds, or were they in a flat kind of area? And what was the canopy cover like? So we kind of took a bunch of notes on that. We felt like we had a good idea of where black ash would be. And then we went to the Vermont Audubon Center, and that completely changed.
What changed?
It was basically, it went from being kind of a hummock red maple dominated forest and mud pond to being more of a true wetland in the Audubon Center, where black ash was a standalone basically. And there was a lot of beaver pressure at the Audubon Center too. So the black ash was actually, they're all stump sprouts, which really kind of changed the dynamics of it. And then we went to Ferrisburg Town Forest the third time, and that completely changed our outlook on things. Because in Ferrisburg, black ash is, it's not truly dominant, but it is the most we witnessed. It was a large component of the canopy cover, and it kind of played a different dynamic in that ecosystem. So based on that information, we kind of took what was the same throughout all of the layers, which was the muck and peat and the natural community types that Charlotte helped us with. And we compiled that all into the map and basically looked at where they all intersected. And then we kind of went from there.
Yeah, and some of that was based on outside research, because we definitely found black ash in locations that didn't have muck and peat, but just traditionally, and like looking at, I guess, what other people have seen and experienced, kind of included that knowledge as well. And in terms of just kind of the data organization, as you mentioned, we added that to iNaturalist, and specifically Charlotte has a project for the black ash inventory in Vermont. So that's where we got all of the other locations as well to add to not just include our data, but other people's as well. And we kind of just had exported that as just a Excel file and brought that into ArcGIS to put the coordinates on the map. So some of these points, if you see, there's a lot of layers on right now, but if you were to, this is where you could go into the layer list and kind of check on and off of these different things that you might want to look at. So like our collection points and the different land and everything. Let's see. So if you click on one of these points from like the orange NR206, which was like our collection, you can see the forest, mud pond, town, Williston, and then the DBH, bowl, and canopy information that we collected. And so that's kind of some insight into how our data really got incorporated into this map.
Are you able, or have you already taken an Excel spreadsheet of the data, like just to say like in mud pond, this many trees were this size and that many trees were that size?
Yeah, that's a good idea. We do have that sheet with all of these different attributes and data and everything, but we haven't, I guess, run those specific like statistics yet, but that would be interesting. And maybe using kind of the iNaturalist collection points from other towns, we could do the same. I think that would be interesting.
We're also just like kind of limited on time to be able to like complete true inventories and like do actual, more scientific assessments of the areas that we were looking at. So it was kind of hard to determine exactly how many are in like an acre or something like that.
Did you look at a risk analysis by any chance in terms of where EAB is, how long EAB's been in a particular area, and where it hasn't shown up yet, so that there's an opportunity to plan for basket for harvesting?
We have kind of that, so we've used some resources that include kind of a map of those like hotspots of where it's been found, but we didn't incorporate that into our resource package or anything. But that would be definitely something good to look at, maybe highlight those areas where it's more urgent to,
Or highlight the areas that's going to be there for a while.
Yeah.
Then you can plan to develop community aspects.
We looked for signs of EAB when we were in all three of the town forests, and thankfully we did not see anything as of yet. But we definitely will put the urgency of that in our resource package, that this is a time, it's got a short timeline. Because EAB it's in the state and it's spreading quickly.
Yes.
Great Parker, Tom Wilson, Forest. We're doing ash treatment. Now it's on our bigger trees. And did you address the costs of that in your recommendations and the packages that have been sent out? It is a rather expensive process.
Yeah, we do have links for like estimation of costs and like how you can, I believe it's Vermont UCF has like some programs to help assist people in making management plans and stuff to plan for costs of that sort.
Yeah, and that was like an acknowledgement we made, which we wouldn't expect it would be feasible to go and find and inject every single black ash tree, because that's definitely not economically feasible. So one of our recommendations was, if you are going to be able to put the cost or the money forward to save a black ash tree, to choose those that are more genetically fit and viable for basket making. So choosing those trees that have a bole height and a DBH that would align with what Abenaki basket weavers could use in the future. And even regardless of if it ever was used for basket making, it's still just an important ecological and culturally significant tree, and to protect that for future generations, even if we can only select a few viable ones, would still be great.
Did you find anything in your research that talks about inoculation of black ash? Black ash grows so much slower than white ash, and so that injection is going to be repeated every other year. Do you run out of space? Do you run out of room to inoculate into live wood?
We struggle. That is a great question. I honestly had that myself in a way, but there is not a lot of information about inoculating black ash. It's all white and green ash. Green ash because they're street trees, and white ash because that's the dominant one in the forest ecosystems in the Northeast. So there was not a clear answer on that, but there was some speculation about how you can use a black ash tree after it's been inoculated. Can you still make baskets out of it? That's kind of where that focus went. And it's kind of user discretion is what we found. So unfortunately, everything's.
Carry with you all, man.
Yeah.
It's my sister's name. But she said they won't use trees that are inoculated.
Yeah.
So, oh.
Yeah. It definitely is.
Sure, I don't see how we could avoid that 40 years from now. It seems impossible to avoid that.
It definitely seems like there needs to be a lot of communication on that front, because an inoculated black ash, if we went on the assumption that it can be used for basketry, then that would limit the resource from the natural environment. But if we stockpiled enough splints and logs before EAB really came through, then there could be a gradual supply that could sustain basket making traditions until EAB has kind of moved through. So that's kind of our hope in that respect.
What was your recommendation for stockpiling splints?
That recommendation was essentially that right now it's very complex because of those lack of resources and storage facilities. And as we mentioned, although it would be ideal for there to be access for harvesting, we don't know if there's the resources in place right now to make that feasible. We don't want to go and recommend it and then, carrier other people being inundated with like, come get this black ash from my backyard, and then there's nowhere to, store it. So we're hoping that by sharing this information, telling people about the importance, introducing those complexities and, kind of challenges to overcome, then we can start discussion and dialogue about how can we move this forward. What are the next steps? Who might be able to make change happen, and just get people kind of excited about the idea of that and talking about it, so we can kind of all figure it out together, because it's definitely not an answer for that right now, unfortunately.
What did Carrie tell you was the biggest obstacle for the Abenaki community?
They're not federally or state recognized, and so it's hard for them to get funding to build storage facilities of any sort. And she talked about the place in Maine that I'm sure you know, where the Mousecott tribe has been able to make that kind of resource and storage facility for black ash trees over there. Yeah, it's definitely the biggest barrier right now.
And beyond funding, she also mentioned the manpower to even harvest and pound out the splints. It's not as easy as it sounds. And we never partake in that, but I think we would have enjoyed kind of getting that experience, and I think we would have gotten a really good feel for it. It's a lot of involvement, and there isn't any other way to do it besides human manpower. So.
And getting the tree out of the woods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Black ash are not light.
How big a piece do they need to take out the woods?
It's recommended 8 feet is what they told us. 6 to 8. Diameter is 8 inches or greater.
But the length of the log also plays into the type of baskets that can be made. So the longer it is, the bigger the project can be.
Yeah.
So like, I don't remember the exact footage, but a certain like larger length, you can make like a big like pack, like a
Pack basket.
pack basket, thank you. Whereas smaller ones would be used for like smaller basketry.
In discussion with Kevin Agriculture context, like, is there still basketing going on in Vermont?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Carrie's definitely the leader right now in the state of Vermont for like outreach of it. And there's not too many basket makers in the state, but there's definitely a small community.
She mentioned there's about 4 or 5 pretty prominent basket makers. It would be Carrie herself, and then her son actually is really involved with it. So they're trying to spread that culture and kind of rebirth that before Emerald Ash Borer really.
Yeah, and then going off what Ethan said, there are 4 or 5 basket makers, but there are only a select few, like Carrie herself, who actually feel comfortable going out and actually teaching the practices of basket making.
I would just add that there, beyond the 4 or 5, there are more basket makers that we're finding out about, but that network has been really fragmented just because of historical and ongoing injustices. And so that's another area that requires some concentrated effort, and that we're going to continue to work on. But yeah, 4 and 5 is the start. And maybe this will come out when we get to see your resource package going to towns, but just a question, and there's not one answer. I'm curious in your opinions, and you may all have different opinions, but what type of language would you use not only to convince a sort of unsuspecting town forest land manager who maybe is into their town forest but has never once thought about black ash specifically, to put in more time for black ash management? And then also, what would you say to a town land manager who they just have a blanket policy of no pesticides, which is actually pretty common. Like, we've dealt with that in the state of Vermont. That's kind of the basic starting point. No pesticides at all. Like, now that you've worked with a few community partners, what are your experiences and reflections on like approaching people who are already invested and knowledgeable? And what if those people are saying, nope, no pesticides? Like, what are your stories? And then approaching someone who's like, has no clue what you're talking about, but they're willing to listen. Is that all wrapped into the town forest package?
I think that was kind of part of what Alex had mentioned before about the fact that originally we went into this thinking that maybe we'd have different resource packets or packages for each kind of level of whether or not there is a plan or anything. But we wanted to kind of consolidate it into one board, just like informational packet. And I think within that, we've gave some different approaches for preserving black ash. So although one of them was treating it when possible, another is just the idea of allowing seed collection, for example. So that's not specifically coming in and treating the tree, but it's still in a way allowing the legacy of black ash to live on if possible. And that's, I guess, what you would consider less of like direct approach to treating the tree. But in terms of language for helping to encourage thinking of those ideas, we were all hoping that the original kind of introduction and background to the significance would help bring attention to that, because we hope that people who are in those positions of managing forests would care about that sort of thing, and that would kind of highlight why they might want to consider these actions. But And same along the lines of like the cost might not be feasible, or telling people we want them to treat it. We understand that people have different approaches. So even if those aren't ideas that might be immediately accepted, we want the conversation to start. And maybe if they are hesitant towards taking one of these approaches, maybe if they'll be able to look at those resources, talk to different contacts, start the discussion, they'll hear from other people who have done it successfully or not done it successfully, to kind of just learn about what options are out there and just be open-minded.
Has anything changed in Harrisburg, or like in the needle where the conversation is going?
In terms of,
Like people's willingness to manage black ash differently than other trees, or?
I don't think we've gotten the
Yeah.
conversation has to go on that far.
Yeah, okay,
We're pushing it in that direction.
yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So Don and I come from the Ferrisburg Conservation Commission. You guys grew up on the Ferrisburg Town Forest. We have the wet clay plain forest, and it's like 31% is black ash. And you guys walked through it, you saw it, and we established permanent inventory plots. So our plan is to continue to monitor those plots and remeasure over time. Are there other organizations or other towns that are doing something similar, and is there, because we're just trying to figure out how to use our data and share our data with other folks in the state or in the region, in terms of monitoring and keeping an eye on specifically black ash and the effects of emerald ash.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of if we're aware of other groups doing that, at least the ones we visited, we didn't come in contact with that, and I don't think that was something we looked into, so I'm not aware of that. But yeah, I think there were so many different elements to this that we couldn't approach, but I think that's something really interesting to include too, is the idea of, monitoring and continuing the iNaturalist observations and seeing what data we can compile from other people, because doing this work just alone in one spot will be helpful for that one spot particularly, but if you can't learn and collaborate with other people, I think that's definitely important, and hopefully we can find out some way to kind of share and figure out what other groups might be doing similar work.
Yeah, and when we were looking through all of the town forest management plan information, I believe there's 80 something different ones that we looked through, and there was Wilson was one of them, but there was, I think, 3 that mentioned black ash specifically in regards to EAP, and maybe 20 or so that have specific plans for EAP. So there's pretty little formal plans in the works right now.
I think right now our plan identifies a wet clay plain forest. I don't remember if it even mentions black ash in the management plan. That was from years ago.
I believe it does.
I think so. We know it's there.
Yeah.
It does, but not in the context of EAP.
Yeah,
No, well, when the plan was prepared
wasn't a thing.
for
Yeah.
EAP.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of the main goal of our project, is our tangible resource package is our main thing to push out, but our main goal, honestly, is just to get people talking about this, because the time frame is short, and there needs to be communication among everyone to kind of get all these resources combined to make a difference. And fortunately, in the 3 months that we had, we could do what we could do, but we're not going to get to the finish line. So there's a lot more to be done, for sure. It's a great opportunity for another 206.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. One was just because you said when you went to those 3 different places where you were doing your inventory, you were surprised at how different some of the different habitat ecosystems that black ash is in. If then when you overlap the inventory data with the potential habitat, did you find anything that was surprising? Was there anything, were there any points, inventory points out of the realm of your possibility there?
Yeah.
There was,
There
yeah,
was.
definitely. And that's definitely a con of this map. And I mean, any powerful ArcGIS spatial analysis, you're gonna miss some things. And one thing I think we did not incorporate, which is very challenging, is topography. Is topography. Black ash likes the little hummock kind of undulations in the ground where water kind of is in the pockets in black ash. And to get that resolution and the spatial software, it's currently not possible unless you did a LiDAR of every single town forest.
I was going to say, we did include an elevation model, which was provided from public LiDAR data. So we do have an elevation model, which you can see kind of the general topography. I don't know if it's labeled specifically on here, but in our story map, we've kind of described those layers and what like resolution that would be. But we can expect to see the tiny minute differences in topography, but the overall like elevation of the state would be visible, which kind of provides some insight. But yeah, in terms of finding stuff we were surprised or not surprised about, we found a lot of observations in places we expected, and then a lot of observations in places, outside of those abundant communities. Yeah.
I would add that in that natural community layer, it's not, the mapping isn't finished, right? There's a lot of areas that don't have the maps complete or haven't been mapped yet, maybe will never be mapped, but so that's another reason that they might not be able to map some of those parameters. Why? Because, wait, why is that? So the ANR, significant community layer on GIS, is incomplete. It only has the areas that have been mapped to this. Right. Oh, that's and the rest of it.
In most private land.
Oh, that is an interesting. Okay.
And that's kind of something we were thinking about. It was important to include in the story map with kind of information about the data layers is when we got those. So, these iNaturalist observations, we exported those on said date in October. So if someone was looking at this map months or years later, potentially, that would be outdated. And so if, this is a project that continues, those could be updated or layers could be re-uploaded as more communities get mapped. So it's something that can kind of grow as time goes on to be more accurate.
Will it live with, who will, I'm assuming, there could be another 206, but it'd be good to have a permanent place for somebody to be.
Yeah, I think that'll be part of our kind of final closing discussion later today about moving forward. Yeah.
My second question was just I know you talked to Carrie a lot. I wondered if you got feedback at all, just about if this was, I know one of the main things that she said they needed was federal recognition and funding. But did she or anyone else offer feedback on whether this map was going to be really key for doing some of the work in terms of getting public access to, we're getting tribal access to these critical pieces, all the information that it provides. Was there feedback on either what happens next or whether this in and of itself is giving them what they need in order to go out and collect really key pieces of material for.
Yeah, Carrie was very excited when we showed her. And she really liked the idea of being able to visualize, at least in the forest, in the context of public forests, where black ash were in the state. But she then went on fairly quickly afterward and said, the need is not for more harvesting of black ash, rather just the protection of it through the next couple of decades.
And knowing where it is though is gonna being able to pinpoint pockets of it and then assessing those areas and being able to pick out ones that are best and trying to help preserve them.
Yeah, well, that was thinking, because I only asked that because there was a lot, we talked a lot about some of the audience being the municipal forests and what their next steps are. But then another audience is the basket makers who's wondering about that side of the feedback. So that's good. That's great. That's good. It's laying the groundwork for what will come next.
Lindsay, circling back to your earlier question, I'm wondering, Chris, given how many trees you've treated, do you have a sense of if you run out of space to inoculate? Like, is that a?
Well, I've only done 2 rounds on them. Certainly that's a concern. That's why I always try to go as few holes as possible. It's I'm curious. I'll be doing a 3rd round on a number of trees this summer. I don't see it running out. I always use the smallest plugs. And I always keep that in mind that I will be I'll rotate holes on the tree. And hopefully by the time I run out of space, I'll have that extra 1.5 inches of new growth over top any old hole that I did. How many years is that going to be? Probably 25, 30, 50. I could.
That's the problem.
These little plugs are pretty small, and you can do it low, and then you can go high to try and avoid some overlap. So there's a lot of, I think we can go for decades. Big problem. Certainly, it is.
It's really good because, the sugar makers is, if you're a sugar maker, you think about an 8-inch tree, it's going to run out of tapping and below. If you keep tapping it, sugar maple grows much faster than the black ash. So those are some of the parallels that you can take a look at. How long does it take for that envelope to be taken up? And it's all about growth. It's all about the amount of growth. In black ash, you want it to grow slow. If you were a basket maker, you want it to grow. You want narrow rings. And even though you can peel the rings further, it is, I don't know the answer. And Chris is definitely doing this.
Yeah, quite a while, for sure.
Yeah.
And some people use the bigger plugs, the unit that we showed up there, the bigger plugs.
And this is black ash or white ash that you're doing? Or you,
All ash trees.
Are you doing black ash? Have you done a lot of black ash?
Not a lot, there's just not a lot out there, but I have a 20 on rotation. So they're out there, but there's smaller plugs that you can use. I'm always looking for a smaller way to inject, but that's also much harder to inject.
So engaging the towns, the community forest is a really ideal way to go about this. I like, the fact that you focused on that because there's information there, more likely to have natural community identification done on public lands. And then you can get community engaged to protect. It's typically what Chris has been doing, and what we do in the islands a lot is if someone's backyard tree, and they don't tend to be black ash, right? They're white ash and green ash, primarily green ash. And that's where people's focus of their money goes, is their own backyard. To convince someone to go out into their swamp to start protecting the trees is a bigger stretch, right? And so.
I've actually done a few, I've only had it happen a few times, but been in somebody's backyard looking at bigger green or white ash, and I'll find a black ash. And I'll instantly go right to it because I get all excited about it. And then if it's typically, I'll just do it for free just because it's a black ash.
We all come down to Ferrisburg.
You're 100.
Stop the recording.
But yeah, it works.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, that's definitely, we wanted to focus on the town forest because they, not in all cases, but they have more resources to be able to implement some of the strategies.
Did you have a strategy for, Joe just said, the Ferrisburg Town Forest has thousands of black ash. What's your strategy for protection in that context?
Pick the best ones in pockets, and unfortunately the rest you're gonna have to just see what happens, because if the resources to inoculate hundreds and thousands of trees it doesn't make sense. But if you can create little pockets of legacy that allow that ecosystem to flourish, that is kind of our goal. And then maybe collect some seeds, throw them in the deep freeze, and once EAB passes through, fingers crossed, you can start replanting.
Is there anything in my eyes, I see black ash totally disappearing, becoming danger? Is there, talk about Species Act, I'm over my head, but at some point, they're gonna be gone.
There is talk about black ash being pretty well eradicated from the United States. They're thinking there might on the top most of its range in Canada, and it might be out of END reach, but it's with climate change, it's probably unlikely. So we didn't look into what acts might be enacted if the species gets to that point, because there's still a lot of black ash in the landscape, but it's definitely a good consideration. And unfortunately, I think
Right. So that is a concern. There is talk about putting it on the endangered species list, but then it would be hard.
yeah.
So that's another concern.
And there's also unfortunately a decrease in federal funding and recognition of EAB, because it's at this point it's in 36 states. They're like, we can't really stop it now. So.
I really do like what you said about their strategy of protection, because it's kind of, I like it because I would do too. Leading cohorts, legacy cohorts, and in pockets. So those areas around it would then have ability to have seeding in over time.
Yeah.
But you're also leaving this microclimate, or you're leaving something of lifeboating the rest of the ecosystem within that context.
Exactly. Yeah. And it would be a lot better in ecological context than just picking that tree there, that tree there. Pick a nice clump and inoculate it. Yeah.
I just have a question about, and it could be something you think about and get back to me later or have an answer right now, but like for each of you as being active and graduating students, right? After you got kind of through the initial learning curve of like what are black ash, what's EAB, like got through all of that, what's one thing that you wish you had more time to study? Like your future student, you dig into what, and that might be different for everyone. You can think about it. I'd be really curious to hear that.
I guess I personally would have liked to have more time to meet with more Beneke community members. We were only able to meet with Carrie, and like we mentioned, that was an incredible conversation. She's just amazing. But I think with everything, having more people come to the table, share their concerns, opinions, their knowledge, it just rounds out whatever solution or attempted solution. So yeah, I would like to talk to more people and gotten a greater sense of what people think would be the best way to tackle this.
I think that I would say that I would have really liked to have been able to actually do more traditional inventory methods and be able to produce a more detailed map of kind of finding a way to, the goal would be to encompass every observation that we find and highlight the areas that they're extremely likely to be, and as opposed to what we have now where we think that this is where they are, but we don't really have the time or the resources to actually check and identify all the locations. So I think that's what I'd like to dig more into.
No more definitively where.
Yeah.
I think personally, I would have enjoyed talking to more professionals like all of you earlier on. Unfortunately, we had to get our grasp and then semester ends. But that would have been helpful, and then taking all of your knowledge combined and then going to a resource that would provide funding, maybe the state of Vermont, maybe the federal government, to kind of get some of this into action, more talk and more action kind of deal. But I think beyond that, maybe a little bit as a sad note, I wish we had kind of jumped on this maybe 10 years earlier. Because it seems like we're at that point where it's like we're hitting the iceberg and it's gonna all come crashing down soon, but there's still time to do something, that's for sure.
Yeah, and for me, I feel like even though I'm an environmental science major, I haven't had so much experience going out in the forest and IDing trees and everything. So doing this, going to these different towns, seeing the trees, entering the information into the iNaturalist, and then opening it up on this map to see all across Vermont, I felt like that helped me make a personal connection to the trees and like understand more about them and their significance. And that's something that I feel really grateful to be able to have done that. And like, I guess that's something that I hope more people can do. I don't know if that's like, you know how people go like bird watching. I don't know if that's a thing, like black ash, like identifying or something, going out into the woods with a group and like talking about it and learning about it, because that's what we all did with Charlotte. And I know I'm sure so many people maybe would have a deeper connection if they did the same thing.
Yeah.
As for me, you know, as a forestry major, definitely didn't deal with a whole lot of like the social science aspect of forestry and natural communities across Vermont. And to be able to like, you know, kind of what Lauren said to me, like that personal connection between, you know, something as important as, you know, preserving, you know, black ash for the Abenaki people, in addition to something that, you know, I learned in dendrology my sophomore year, it's just, you know, black ash, and actually being able to like tie the two together and see how, you know, it is something worth, you know, working for and perpetuating into the future, kind of made it like, you know, worth it for me at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, similar to Lauren, I didn't have any background in forestry or forest ecosystems in my 4 years studying. So it was really cool to learn about these things. And if we had the time to like go across Vermont and really get to know the landscape and try and apply the new knowledge that I had and also learn new things, that would have been really valuable, I think.
I think I can speak for everybody and say we don't look at black ash.
Black ash is watching.
I think the black ash is grateful to you.
Well,
Thank you.
We hope so.
Did you ever look at the county forests at all?
We did not know.
Because Ethan Tapper is a black ash advocate.
Yeah.
So he's the one working with us in our program.
Yeah. He's also like big into outreach, especially in the other. Yeah. So.
Yeah, as much as we don't want to stop this discussion kind of coming to an end, but we hope that everyone keeps in touch and continues this dialogue. And thank you so much for attending it. It means a lot.
Yeah, thank you.